This loathsome habit again. Which poison did you settle on this morning? You know full well, Watson. Boredom is the true venom making my little attic lose its structure. Today on the Comic Book Report, inside the mind of Sherlock Holmes, the case of the Scandalous ticket. From Titan Comics. Stick around and check it out. Welcome in, everyone. My name is Dominic, and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'm excited to say I've prepared a comic book review for all of you looking at a Titans Comics release. This is Inside the Mind of Sherlock Holmes. And frankly, this is like no other reading experience I've had of late, and I can't wait to jump in and talk about it today. I first heard about this collection from Jess over at OmniDog's Vault, and I was ecstatic when I found that Titan was willing to send me a review copy. So a huge thank you to all of them over at Titan Comics. If this book looks good to you, please consider supporting this release. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into today's review. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written by Benoit, Dahan, and Cyril Lieron, and illustrated by Benoit, Dahan. The volume itself was published by Titan Comics in 2023. This volume does collect the English translation of the full graphic novel. And finally, this is an oversized hardcover edition with nice glossy print paper stock, a glued binding, and a total of 96 pages. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first look at that oversized hardcover from Titan Comics. I really love the size of this book. It's one of those nice kind of square oversized hardcover formats. I'm seeing a lot more of these in the recent years, and honestly, I'm all for it. I have several DC Comics Black Label books that are around this same size. I'll try to do a size comparison with some other notable formats to give you an idea of how this stands up. Love the cutout we have as well on this front cover, very unique and cool. The spine of this collection retains all the color palettes we have on the front cover, which I always enjoy seeing. We have some nice detailed titling, the publisher, things like that. Overall, everything is very legible, well printed, and I think that the colors and graphic design of the spine really suits this collection nicely. Overall, no complaints here. I think it looks excellent on the bookcase. Okay, and on the back of the collection here, we have a nice little image of Sherlock. This is definitely how the character is modeled for this set, so you get a good idea of the art. And everything is really nice, ornate. We have a description about the book, kind of what it has here, pricing information. There is a mature reader advisory, which I gather would be for the drug use and kind of violence in this collection. Nothing too extreme in my mind, but definitely reader discretion advised. Now, this collection has no dust jacket, so I'm going to go ahead and skip right to the actual binding of this book, just to give everyone a look here. As I mentioned, it is a glued binding, but the pages lay out quite well. Very little to no gutter loss to speak of, and overall, I couldn't have been happier with the binding. A really good job here. It is a smaller collection as far as the page count, but you still have a ton going on in the pages. A very fun experience. Okay, and now I'm going to do a couple quick size comparisons, as I mentioned earlier, to give you an idea of the size of this book. I'm going to be using a couple comics I've gotten in recently. First, we'll have a trade paperback, which is just a standard size paperback format. For that, I have the first volume of Jonathan Hickman's Ultimate Spider-Man. As you can see, Inside the Mind of Sherlock Holmes stands a bit taller. It is going to be the height dimension of an omnibus, which is really great to see. It's also a little bit overlong compared to the trade paperback. Okay, and here's that Sherlock Holmes book next to an omnibus edition. Now, omnibuses are oversized hardcover editions, and as you can see, it stands just as tall and is actually a little bit wider. Showcasing my omnibus here, this is the Question Omnibus Volume 1 from DC Comics. Really happy to finally have parts of this run back in my collection and in this amazing omnibus format. I do have an unboxing video for this particular omnibus scheduled in my video queue, so if it hasn't come out already, it will be coming out shortly if you're interested. But now, of course, back to our main event today. Let's delve into the mind of Sherlock Holmes. Opening up the collection, again, we have that great cutout, kind of symbolizing we're going inside the head of Sherlock Holmes. Love that. End pages on this collection are beautiful. Up front, we have Holmes in a library, have a title page, publication information page, things like that, and then we jump right into the collection. And I will say, right from the jump, there were, I believe, two parts of the story that comprise this whole graphic novel experience, and you'll see where there's a bit of an act break in this collection for that. Now, this is an English translation of an originally French work, which was, adapting this British detective. So there's a lot going on in the soup here, but it is really masterfully done. In fact, it's one of the most beautiful comic book collections I've read in recent memory. So what is inside the mind of Sherlock Holmes? Well, it's frankly what it sounds like. We have Sherlock Holmes and Watson on another case, but this time we get to go inside the mind of Sherlock Holmes at several key moments throughout this book, and we get to see basically how his mind works, what he does with ideas, how he sorts information, how he problem solves, everything like that. We have some beautiful visual cues, like an ongoing thread that kind of unifies all the different ideas and clues throughout until the inevitable reveal or conclusion of the case. I really like this facet of this. As a longtime Sherlock Holmes fan in so many different mediums, it was great to see Sherlock Holmes given the graphic novel treatment in such a just jaw-droppingly unique way. To my understanding, this is a unique story for this graphic novel, The Case of the Scandalous Ticket. However, what I enjoy about it, perhaps most of all, is it feels very faithful to the works of Conan Doyle in general, and kind of honoring how this character has been treated all of these years. So if you're a fan of just kind of Sherlock Holmes in general, I think that this could really be up your alley. If, however, The World's Greatest Detective is not really for you, but the art looks great and you're a fan of graphic novels, this might still be worth picking up. This mystery takes place when Sherlock Holmes is kind of bored and indulging in his cocaine habit. Watson comes in and essentially catches him, and we see that he's kind of wasting away and abusing drugs, based largely on boredom between large cases. He's kind of roused from this stupor, though, when a case kind of lands at his doorstep, in a manner of speaking. We have an injured and severely confused old colleague or peer of Dr. Watson's show up, and we find out that he was kind of involved in a amnesia, disappearance, possible murder mystery, and this just really speaks to Sherlock, who is immediately on the case. Throughout the 96 pages of this graphic novel, we have Holmes and Watson tracking down leads, interviewing, making their way through London's, checking out different scenes, finding some murder victims, and generally trying to uncover what happened to this colleague. We have everything kind of revolving around this central theatrical performance. This is where the Scandalous Ticket takes place. The tickets are a kind of clue, but it's ultimately this sort of Asian-influenced, inspired magic show, but there's a lot more underneath the surface of exactly what's going on there and who the victims of these disappearances or murders are, why they're being taken, and who's at the core of this issue. Along the way, as I mentioned earlier, we have Holmes kind of dissecting individual clues and pieces of information, and again, how this is all arranged is one of the most standout aspects of this whole collection. Again, we get to go inside of his head. We see a lot of little Sherlocks just processing information, sorting data, going through files, and this is all in an effort to show us how he begins to solve these mysteries in real time. I loved this added wrinkle. I think visually the art is absolutely astounding for this collection. Definitely has a European comic feel to it, which makes sense, of course, but I loved it. We have everything being hyper detailed. All the character models are striking, unique. It doesn't really have that rounded feel. It's a lot more angular and sharp lined, but again, it just works. There's almost a dreamy aspect to the artwork as well. It's kind of hard to say exactly why. Maybe it's that sepia tone paper or the kind of color palette they used, but for whatever reason, it has that old-timey kind of turn of the century Sherlock Holmes feel. It is kind of a period piece. This is not a modern Sherlock Holmes set kind of story. No, he's all the way back when those original stories are set, and this is really just like you're uncovering another Conan Doyle mystery. Again, a really fantastic work here. And hey, while I still have your attention, if you're enjoying this comic book review and you also like things like comic book unboxings, list videos, shorts, and more, and you've yet to subscribe to the channel, I would just like to go ahead and invite you to do so. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's keep this review right on going. Now, as for the rest of the plot of the Scandalous ticket, I'm going to really leave that for your own reading pleasure. I don't really want to spoil too much just with my audio here. I will be flipping through parts of the collection still, so be advised. As I said at the beginning, there will be spoilers, but I don't want to speak to it too much. Again, because so much of this story is that central mystery, I'll let the kind of unveiling of everything, I'll leave that again to you. But I just want to switch over now and talk a bit more about the artwork here. The art, again, is just absolutely jaw-dropping, and I think an aspect of it I haven't really discussed yet that is absolutely evident on every single page, splash page, two-page spread, is just how experimental the panel layout is. We have very few actual kind of like 9-panel pages. Yes, they do kind of show up, but more than that, we have a lot of breakouts or uniquely kind of modeled or arranged artwork. Like I said, we have a lot of sort of silhouette head shapes where we can go inside the head of Sherlock Holmes in different ways. We have, again, that thread kind of passing through the whole novel. And another added wrinkle in this collection is that there are a couple moments where this book actually invites you to partake in the mystery in some unique ways. Like there's portions that'll point to a circle and say, hey, look through this section in the light, and you'll put the whole book up to the light and you'll actually see something through the page, and it kind of gives you the clue. Or they'll have things on the end that say, hey, gently fold this section back, and a previous page will line up with the folded section and reveal a new image. There are a couple little things like that throughout this book that really also set it apart. I love how interactive this book feels, how it breaks away from a lot of standard convention, and it just helps with just being a very riveting piece of fiction. I understand that this particular art style is perhaps not for everyone, but wow, did it hit for me on every possible front. In addition to just being something different than I see in my day-to-day, maybe superhero comic book reading, I loved all the detail work that these artists gave to this piece of work. I loved seeing all the detail work. I actually am going to relish reading through this again sometime in the future just to see if I pick up on even more details I missed out on the first time through. There's definitely a wealth of information visually and with the exposition, and I just think that they did a cool job laying out all the clues in such a visually pleasing package. Again, for those that like a good whodunit or mystery or Sherlock Holmes story in general, this is a fun and exceedingly interactive way to partake in a new mystery. Overall, for the story's resolution, I was happy with its conclusion. I think I might have wanted a little bit more at the end, just story-wise, but I think the wrap-up was still very satisfying. The final act was still conclusive enough in a way that I enjoyed, and honestly, I would love to see more Sherlock Holmes stories from these creators. I have no idea if they have plans to write more in this line or in this way, but even if this is a standalone graphic novel experience for Sherlock Holmes in this way, wow, did I love the ride. And for the back end pages, as you just saw, we have all the clues laid out for the whole collection. I thought this was also a nice touch and cool to see end pages that were different on the front versus the back of the collection. Okay, and that's going to bring us to the end of Inside the Mind of Sherlock Holmes, The Case of the Scandalous Ticket by Cyril, Lieron, and Benoit Dahan from Titan Comics. And now all that's left to do is to give this comic a grade. And it should be no surprise after hearing me gush about this book for over 10 minutes, with the stunning visual storytelling paired with just a fun Sherlock Holmes mystery, the Comic Book Report is happy to give Inside the Mind of Sherlock Holmes, The Case of the Scandalous Ticket, an A. This is a must-read for Sherlock Holmes fan, and honestly a must-read for comic fans out there that like more of a European comic sensibility and just really beautiful, masterfully done storytelling. This actual release from Titan Comics I thought was a labor of love. There's so many great details down to the end pages. Really loved this book, can't recommend it highly enough. Fingers crossed we get a sequel of some kind in the future. I know I would line up to read. If you can, please let me know in the comments if you've read or plan to read Inside the Mind of Sherlock Holmes. I would love to get some more feedback on this collection from those of you that have read it or have been interested in it. Again, I just really enjoyed my experience, and I would love to discuss it with more of you in the comments. And again, a huge thank you to our friends at Titan Comics for sending this review copy. Thank you so much, everyone, and until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to give this video a like, a comment, and maybe check out another video on your way out. Thanks, and have a good one.